Good evening, everyone, and thank you for listening to the Futurati Podcast, where we dive into how emerging technologies will impact the world and your bank account. I'm Trent Fowler, and I'm bringing you a solo episode tonight because my co-host Thomas Fry is a famous futurist and is off giving a talk somewhere. Speaking of futurists, Thomas and I are futurists, keynote speakers, and consultants with decades of experience in analyzing trends and communicating new developments to audiences across the world. Reach out to us at futuratipodcast.com/contact-futurati if you'd like to hire us for consulting, to speak at your event, or to advertise on our podcast. This episode tonight was with Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum, and it was a bit of a departure from the usual fare that we feature here on the Futurati podcast. Normally, we talk about blockchains and cryptocurrencies, neuroscience, AGI, quantum computing, and space exploration. Dr. Ghannoum is actually a mycologist. He studies fungus, and you might think naively that the world probably knows all that there is to know about fungus, and it turns out that's not true. It has connections to cancer, to autism, to gut health, to brain health, to a variety of different things, and actually there might even be a pandemic in the making in the form of what's called Candida auris, a strain of fungus that is resistant to a variety of different drugs and is in a lot of different places, thousands of cases here in the United States, is spreading fairly rapidly and has a pretty high mortality rate. So, that's something to look forward to. So this is it's an unusual episode from the point of view of the Futurati podcast, but Dr. Ghannoum is fantastic. He's a consummate researcher, and he has a fascinating story. We spent some of the beginning of the episode getting into his escape from the invasion of Kuwait by Saddam Hussein, which was rather more entertaining than I thought it would be. So I'm glad we did it. I'm glad that I got the opportunity to meet him and to talk to him and to understand a little bit more about the slice of human knowledge, which I had never before had occasion to get into. I hope you feel the same way. And without further ado, here is episode 126 with Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum. Tonight, we're joined by Dr. Mahmoud Ghannoum. Dr. Ghannoum is a tenured professor and director of the Center for Medical Mycology at Case Western Reserve University and University Hospital Medical Center. He is also the co-founder of BIOHM, the first total microbiome company in the United States. He is the preeminent NIH-funded scientist on all things fungi and brings a captivating discussion to this largest life form on Earth, which is genetically closer to humans than plants and at the core of human wellness. If you enjoy this interview, please subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends. And don't forget to check out our website, futuratipodcast.com. Dr. Ghannoum, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's hear a little bit about your background, your interests, and what brought you to working on the projects that you're working on today.
Well, my background, I am a professor at Case Western Reserve University and University Hospitals of Cleveland. Also, I am a co-founder of BIOHM Health, where we develop probiotics and we do gut testing to help our gut health and overall health. I have been in Cleveland, Ohio for the last nearly 25 years, and before that at UCLA, and of course, that's when I came to the US. I used to be a professor at Kuwait University till the invasion of Kuwait. And lo and behold, overnight, I lost my job and I was in a mess. But you know what? Sometimes bad things happen, which really open new opportunities. And that's exactly what happened in our case and my family.
I hear you have some interesting stories about escaping from Saddam Hussein's invading armies. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was in England when the invasion happened. We were on vacation. Kuwait, because it's so hot in the summer, they give you two months holiday. So I was with my family in England, and lo and behold, 1 week before we go and back to Kuwait, we had the invasion. And then, of course, we were in vacation. It's like you go to Costa Rica and you can't come back home.
Right.
So anyway, I had to go because all our important papers, all our, really very, very important memory stuff were in Kuwait. So what I did, I went back from England. I went through Iraq and before that, I went to Jordan, and then from Jordan, I was supposed to travel to Iraq, to Baghdad, to go to Kuwait because there was no flights to Kuwait anymore. And that's what I did. I went. It was very interesting story. But then I went to from Baghdad in a small bus with Iraqi soldiers. And I was sitting there in small, these little, micro buses. And it was very long journey with all these young soldiers, which really, it's unbelievable. So anyway, we went into Kuwait, and I was able to get the stuff which are important and travel back from, you know, they called it, they said it's not no more Kuwait, it's Iraq now. So you go from Iraq to Jordan to Lebanon and then back to England to meet with my family.
Didn't you hotwire a Pepsi truck? Wasn't there something kind of like that?
Yes, it was to get our furniture. So there was nothing there. So we had Pepsi truck, which was sitting there. We said, okay, listen, we gave the guy some money, and he really took the essential stuff, really the very basic stuff, which important. Everything else, the kids' toys, the kids' bikes, clothes and whatever, we gave it to people who stayed in Kuwait. And then we had to go through Jordan. And oh my God, what a trip it was to reach Jordan. It's so funny when we arrived at the Iraqi-Jordan border. Guess what? It was the line for people leaving Iraq is unbelievable. So I said, I went back into, hustling. So I said, listen, I'm Dr. Ghannoum. Where is your general? They say, are you a doctor? I say, yes, I am a doctor. I didn't tell him I am a scientist. I told him, I'm a doctor. So
I'm a doctor of a sort. I'm a doctor of a sort.
Because I don't think they understood the scientist or not scientist, So anyway, I talked to the this really major who was leading everything, and he comes to me. He said, "You know what? I have headache." I say, "Oh, are you surprised? You are standing here in the sun all the time, but I have something good for you." So what I had, in the back of the car, I had some sunscreens for the kids when we go, in Kuwait. So I said, "This is what you need to do." And you know what he did? He moved my car and the Pepsi truck all the way to the front.
Wow.
So it worked.
It worked. Wow, that is quite a maneuver you pulled there. What was it like seeing such a historical event? I mean, have you carried those memories with you? Did it change anything about the way you see the world?
It was unbelievable because, as you said, like overnight, suddenly you are a refugee, and now we know a lot of refugees in the world, and so you can appreciate what people go through, and also it changed the mentality that we are all human beings, because lo and behold, everybody was running, and Kuwait had more than 100 nationalities. A lot of people are expat there. So you get to help each other irrespective of where you come from. And my wife used to get calls from all over the place telling her, oh, he's here, he's there. So really you appreciate what's going on, and you also feel with people. But to me, the most important thing, honestly, I now believe we are all human beings, and we all respect each other. We don't have to agree on everything, but we should respect each other and help each other. And because, it doesn't matter where we are from or not, we are all trying to make a living. So that's my view now is very simple. Look, we are all human beings. Let's help each other. We don't have to agree on everything, but it's good if we help each other. And you know what? When I came to the US, this is exactly what happened. People who I don't know, they helped me. I'm when I came to the US, I went to the National Institute of Health, and there is a person there who had the mycology division there. His name is Jack Bennett. So I called him. I said, listen, I am here. I need a job. He said, who are you? I said, look, my name is Mahmoud Ghannoum. I lost my job with in Kuwait invasion. And the guy, you could not believe how good he was. So he said, listen, why don't you come in 2 weeks? Because we have a big meeting for all the investigators, the important key opinion leaders on fungal infections. They're coming to DC. Why don't you come? I say, look, I can't do it. But what happened? I can give you my curriculum vitae or resume, you know?
Right.
He said, okay. And in my way back to the hotel where I was given a talk of on all things of all things about garlic, I saw this travel agent, you know. So I went to him and he was a black guy. And I said to him, listen, you are black guy, you know the suffering of people. I need your help. Honest to God. Like I don't know if I do it now, you know, because
Right. You get
I didn't
canceled. You
know.
can't say that now. The
Yeah.
90s, you could say that. You can't say that now.
Yeah, but I didn't know. I said, listen, you know, this is what I need your help. He said, what do you want? I said, I need you to change my ticket. I need to come back to the. I have a friend of mine in Milwaukee. I go and stay with him and come back. This is important meeting for me because all of these people who are important in the field, they may help me. And you know what? He helped me and he gave me some money. He changed my ticket, and I came back after 2 weeks. And you know, Jack Bennett, he invited me to his house where he had everybody there. So that evening, I got two jobs, one at UCLA, one at Wayne State, you know, and that's the end of it. You know, that's how we got integrated into this place, and how, again, showed how good people help others. And then, you know, it really changed their life, not only my life personally, but also my kids and this sort of thing.
That's a remarkable story. I'm really glad that it's that you shared it and that it had a happy ending for you. I'm sort of curious as to how you view the invading Iraqi soldiers. So you said that the war taught you that we're all humans and we're all trying to make a living. To what extent does that apply to the aggressors? Do you feel the same way about them as well? Do you harbor any animosity?
You know, honestly, when you get to meet them, you see, first of all, they are not very well trained. They are all young guys. And like you feel sorry for them. You know, these people go and fight.
Yeah.
And of course, like you don't, the situation is very tenuous, and you have to be careful because I don't know these soldiers. I don't know these. And what they did, they changed everything. Everything became Iraqi, you know. They called it the 19th province. So then when I wanted to leave, I have to change all my driving license, everything to become Iraqi driving license, you know. So you had to deal with all of these guys. And, you know, I don't, you know, I did not feel any animosity. I thought these people, God love them. He sent them this guy. He's a dictator. And, you know, Saddam Hussein was well known to be a dictator before, you know,
Hmm.
but it became obvious, of course, because of the invasion. And these people, Iraqi people, when you meet them, and you know, I used to know a lot of them when I was at Kuwait University, and they are nice people, they are smart, and this sort of thing. But then suddenly you have this guy who is the head of the country, and he's a butcher, the guy, you know.
Hmm.
So you feel sorry for them, but of course you have to be careful. I mean, I don't know these people, and it's invasion, and so you have to be careful, you know.
Yeah, it's a shame. It's sort of remarkable how when the wrong person is in power, a bunch of people who are just 24, who ought to be in college, who ought to be in grad school or open working in a mechanic shop or something like that, end up invading a neighboring country. And it sort of reminds me of Hannah Arendt's comment about the banality of evil, where when you get down to it, you know, there are psychopaths and sociopaths, but a lot of the people who do these things are just people, you know, who are just kind of caught up in the system that's evolving and changing, that's bigger than they are. And they don't understand how to get out of it, and they don't understand what its implications are. And one thing leads to another. And before you know it, you're invading.
I really agree with you. Honestly, that's a lot of the time. And that's why it's sad. Like we sometimes, we're not talking politics, but like living in a country where you have laws and order, and, you know, it's really very important. Otherwise, you have these dictators, and, you know, I'm sure you hear about them all over the world. We don't have to go
Hmm.
specifics, and they just exploit the people, you
Hmm.
know. And that's sad. That's sad. And this is happening a lot in the world these days. And that's why we really should appreciate the way of life we have here. And we are lucky people, when you compare ourselves to everybody else, even these days, not not in the day of the war or in Iraq. It's different, you know. We are very lucky.
No, I completely agree. I hear a lot of people belly aching, and I mean, it's not to say there aren't legitimate problems, but I often say if you threw a dart at a map or you threw a dart at a calendar, there's a 99% chance that wherever you ended up and whenever you ended up would be much worse than it is now.
Honestly, that's the truth. And I travel a lot, because of my job as a professor. I travel a lot, and I see. And you can like even now, if you give me a choice, where would I like to live? I tell you, I will pick the U.S. No matter what. And I lived in England. I know Europe.
Yeah.
Here, the difference in this society is that, look, if you work hard, you are a nice guy, people don't impede you. They will help you. Sometimes in other countries you have to be one of the old boys. Otherwise you will not be given the same opportunity as you will have here. That's the difference.
Yeah, I agree. It's not to say that the society is flat. There's nepotism,
No,
there's dynasties, there's stuff like that, the Clintons or the Trumps or whatever. But
true.
still, I mean, if you're enterprising and you work hard and you're reasonably bright and you've got a good idea, you probably stand a better chance of succeeding here than almost anywhere else. We've got more rags to riches stories than I think anybody does, and that's something really
Exactly.
to be proud of. It's baked into our DNA. It's there from the beginning, and it's something that we should all aspire to.
Hello, this is Trent Fowler, co-host of the Futurati podcast. One of the most common pieces of marketing advice I've come across is to know your audience and give them what they want. One difficulty in podcasting is that it's actually pretty hard to do this. None of the major platforms give us any way to reach out to you, our listeners, to find out what you enjoy about the Futurati podcast and what you'd like to see done differently. So we've decided to record this commercial and ask you directly to reach out to us. Head over to futuratipodcast.com, go to the contact page, and drop us a line. Tell us about your favorite and least favorite episodes, what you'd like to see us cover in the future, and anything else you want us to know. We produce this show for you, and we want your advice so we can make it even better. Thank you.
I really agree. I think we are on the same page like that. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. So I didn't bring you on just to talk about the invasion in America. You're a professor. You said that you got a job in the mycology department when you first came here after the invasion of Kuwait. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that research and what mycology is and how you pronounce the word fungi? Like, just sort all that out for us.
So mycology is the study of fungus. So at Case Western Reserve University, I direct the Center for Medical Mycology. In other words, a center that study fungus. Okay. So what I do in there is a couple of things. Number one, I do basic research. So I get funding from the National Institute of Health, where I study what makes fungus cause disease. Okay. And there are a couple of different types of fungus. There are some which all of us know, like athlete foot, for example. This is
Right.
superficial infection, but there are others which are serious, such as candida infection in cancer patients. So these are what you call systemic infections. In other words, it can cause basically like your kidneys get colonized, and people, like, the mortality rate is really quite high.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the study of fungus. And what I do, apart from basic research, also I do translational research. In other words, once we find something important in understand the mechanism of how this fungus or what makes a given fungus cause infection, then you start thinking, how can we control it? And that's where translation, like you translate your finding to find new drugs. And I help a lot of companies to develop their antifungals on others. In other words, antifungals drugs that kill fungus compared to antibacterial, which kills bacteria. So and we really do a good. I'm very proud of what we do, because I helped a number of companies more recently, couple of companies where they had FDA approval for their antifungals, where we helped them from the test tube to the patient. You see what I mean? So that's what's the fungal really center that I established over the last 25 years in here at Case Western Reserve University and University Hospitals of Cleveland. Now, more recently, I started looking at fungus as in the microbiome. The microbiome, let's define it. It's like we know that there are organisms or microbes that live on our body and in our body. Like, for example, we have microbes in our skin, but also we have in our gut, in our mouth, and this sort of thing. And now with the new advancement in technology, like sequencing technology, we started to see that, these organisms, they can be beneficial, but they can be harmful as well. Like all of us, sometimes we say, oh my God, these organisms are bad. Not all organisms are bad. Some of them are really good. And that's why what we need to nourish them. And how fungus came into this is everybody used to talk about the microbiome, but they talk about bacteria. I said, no. Fungus also is in our body, okay? And we should look at both of them. And a lot of the time, I'll tell them, look, if you think about it, we have bacteria and fungus living in our body, and they help each other or they control each other. So bacteria, the good bacteria, controls, let's say, the fungus candida, which causes thrush, for example, And if you use an antibiotic, you will kill the bacteria, the good and the bad, okay? And guess what happened? This gives the opportunity for the fungus to start to grow. That's why I said, listen, this is a good example why we should look at both bacteria and fungus. And that's where we coined the term microbiome, which refers to the fungal community that lives in and on our body.
That's really remarkable. What lines of inquiry are you pursuing with that? Because I'm vaguely aware that with microbiome research, there's just a lot there to explore. And there's a gut-brain axis, and there's communication along these pathways we don't understand very well. So I'm very interested in sort of the hidden depths of the human body and the ways in which it interacts with mood and with performance and with aging and health. What can you tell us about the microbiome? What are you discovering there?
So the first studies we started when we start looking at the microbiome, and at this, I must add here, we also looked at the same time as the bacteria, the bacteriome, because I'm a great believer in these. They live together and they interact. So the first studies we did in HIV-infected patients, where people with AIDS, what happened to them? They develop oral thrush. So we start looking at what microbes live in the mouth of patients compared to healthy people. And we found that there is both bacteria and fungus. In fact, we found 101 fungi in the mouth of people, So then we start to say, okay, how do they play together or help each other or otherwise? And we found that there is a yeast called Pichia, Pichia. Some people call it Pichia, which is able to control candida, and we use that, and we start to study how can we use this Pichia to control candida infection, okay? But then in 2016, I started looking at Crohn's disease patients, In Crohn's disease patients, what we found in the gut of these patients, they have an imbalance in the microbiome. So usually when we are in good health, we have a balance. In other words, the good guys are really more predominant or more available. Their level is higher than the bad guys, okay? So, and what we found is that both bacteria, such as E. coli, as well as Serratia marcescens, and the organism Candida tropicalis, one of the species of Candida, they were of high abundance, increased in these Crohn's disease patients. Right. And then we started to see, okay, what can we do to really control these organisms, okay? And that's where we started to go into the gut testing, as well as developed a probiotic, which can really, we just published a not published. We submitted a paper. We just completed a clinical trial, and where we showed that using this probiotic as an enzyme called amylase, what it does, it's one of the digestive enzymes. It is able to control these bad bugs or these pathogens, and so this is one of the things which we developed very well. But I want to come back to what you said about gut-brain axis,
right?
Because this is very important. Why? Because we think only the germs in the gut are the only thing they affect. But in fact, sometimes the germs in our gut can have effects in the brain. Okay, that's why they communicate together, they talk together. And it is bidirectional communication. In other words, it's two-way street. Not only our brain talks to our gut, but our gut or the microbes, the microbiome in our gut talks to our brain, okay? And they affect mood. In fact, I wrote a paper now maybe over a year. It's entitled Microbiome-Based Approach to Manage Depression During COVID. Because if you can control the microorganism in your gut, you will affect your mood, as we said, the back and forth communication between them, and that's why I think this is we are entering into a very exciting area because our times. Why? Because now we know what organisms are there. We know that they could affect our mood, our anxiety. They could affect autism, for example. Okay, so now we are trying to think, okay, what can we do to influence this so that we help people, and this is very exciting.
Are you enjoying this episode of the Futurati podcast? If so, please like it, give the show a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with your friends. By far, the best way to help us grow is to spread the word on social media, which will expose our content to more people and help us continue to bring you interviews with world-leading experts in AI, quantum computing, cryptocurrencies, and so much more. Thank you in advance.
That's fantastic. Yeah. So in the biographical materials you sent over, you noted that you've got peer-reviewed studies on the connection between mycology and cancer, baby health, brain health, all sorts of different areas. So what are some of the directions that your research is going with respect to those areas?
Yeah, what we are doing at the moment is, one is autism. We collected samples from children with autism and their relative, or in the same household, brothers or sisters that are not autistic, and we compared the difference between them to find why these kids have autism, or at least when they have autism, what is the profile of their gut microbiome. And we found the imbalance, and now we are trying to do something to really bring back this imbalance, because by doing this we will help them at least with their digestive issues. The kids with autism, they have a lot of digestive issues, their ability to eat food and this sort of thing. So now our finding, we are hoping, will allow us to develop something that's going to help them in this regard. So that's one thing we are doing. The other thing we are starting to think.
Could I ask you a question? Could I ask you a question about that? Sure. So is it just that these autistic patients have digestive problems? Do you think there's a connection between that mycological imbalance and the actual autism disorder?
This is very, very important, very, very good question. I think it's very difficult for us to do something where we change the microbiome and we are going to cure autism. I don't think this is possible, right? Because but what we can do is help them with certain symptoms they have. So to me, I don't think the autism is due to the imbalance in microorganism when the baby is born and this sort of thing. Okay, there are some other issues at heart. So to me, I would like to see how we can help them with certain symptoms, because by helping or improving their gut issues, their behavior will also improve. Okay, And yeah.
What's the connection? Because it's not obvious to me why there would be any problems with the gut in an autistic person versus a neurotypical person. Like, why would there be that connection at all?
Because of this imbalance, as I said, because of the gut-brain axis, the microbes that are present in autistic kids, they can produce some metabolites or small molecules that could affect the immunity of the patient. It could affect the neurotransmitters in the brain. And this is the connection more so than causing it. All these metabolites, all these, like for example, short chain fatty acids could be imbalanced. Also, I cannot talk much about it because we are currently doing this. We found a certain bacteria that really can affect their behavior that is elevated. So we are trying to see, can we change this bacteria? And that's hopefully what we will be able to do in the coming. This is more challenging. Why? Because you cannot say, I'm going to develop a nutritional supplement to cure, or to treat autism. Because this is a disease, therefore you have to go through the drug route, the FDA drug route. So you have to do all the studies like you're developing a new antibiotic or a new anti-cancer drug, okay? And the challenge there for small companies like, for example, BIOHM, it's very expensive to do these studies, So hopefully down the line, we will be able to partner with certain companies that have deep pockets and help us in developing, through the drug route, or called biotherapeutics instead of nutritional supplements.
So if I track the explanation, the autistic brain produces a different portfolio of metabolites, and because of this bidirectional communication between the gut and the brain, that different set of metabolites affects the microbiome and the mycobiome in a way that causes ancillary problems. Is that right?
Yes, it's two ways. If the imbalance in the gut because of the microbiome, it will affect the brain. And also if we have cortisol, for example, in the brain, will affect the gut. So it's two ways. Both of them influence each other.
That's remarkable. I wonder what other situations you might have like that, where like a person who's depressed because of inflammation also has messed up gut flora or whatever, and that causes other knock-on effects that exacerbates the condition, and it becomes this like cycle that just feeds itself.
It really is. That's why, like, we took example of autism, but Alzheimer, for example, multiple sclerosis, again, it's affected. So you are absolutely right. It's not only one type of disease, it's the different neurodegenerative diseases have been shown to be affected by the microbiome and vice versa.
That's remarkable. Yeah, that's remarkable. Very promising line of research.
Yeah. That's why it's exciting. It's exciting because you think, this could be a very really very important if we are successful. And to me, maybe I am an optimistic guy. I think people are doing good research. We are entering an exciting time. I just published a paper. It should come out. It's already out online in gastroenterology, but it's going to be in April, come out as the print, where we discussed how you can modulate the microbiome to have better health. Okay. And I used one example, which I alluded to, about Crohn's disease. What we did about that, we studied Crohn, we found what is out of balance, and then we tried to find probiotic and enzymes to try to bring this balance back, rebalance and maintain it. Okay. And then we use these to do validation. We did in vitro studies, test tube studies, we did animal studies, and we did 2 clinical trials, and one last one we just completed and we submitted for publication, where we showed that using this formulation which was developed, it is able to reduce bloating, flatulence, abdominal discomfort, and as a tertiary endpoint, it was able to reduce what you call anxiety using a marker called GAD-7. But with this in mind, we are going to do more in this area to see can we develop something that's going to help in stress and anxiety.
Do you need a dynamic and knowledgeable speaker for an event? Thomas Fry and me, Trent Fowler, are both seasoned keynote speakers, able to converse on a wide array of topics to audiences of all sizes and skill levels. Go to the contact page at futuraudiopodcast.com to book Thomas or myself today, and let us apply our years of experience in public speaking to make your event a smashing success.
That's remarkable. Yeah, I mean, that would help a lot of people. And it's amazing that's a promising vector for you to look at, that it's not about rebalancing neurotransmitters. It's not about modulating brain activity. It goes down to the gut. I think it lends credence to the hypothesis that the gut's a kind of second brain, that there's really a lot going on down there that bears examination and repays careful study.
Yes, I really agree with you. I really agree. That's why I said, like, we are entering into a very exciting area. And these days, every day you see new findings in this area. And I think there is a lot of interest because the data is starting to be promising. You know, at the beginning, sometimes like everything else, you know, you start with science, it takes time. But once you have the momentum, it will start working fast.
Well, it's no surprise the word fun is right there in the name, you know, fungus.
Yes.
So I understand that you are the lead tracker for a superbug that we need to worry about. So can you tell us a little bit about Candida auris and what it is and how it's being treated and whether we're all going to die?
I hope not, but
right.
I tell you about Candida auris. It's a new species of Candida. Remember, the Candida is the genus, it's like the family, and then you go into the babies, which is the species. Candida albicans, tropicalis, and now recently this new Candida species called Candida auris was first discovered in Japan in the ear of a patient. That's why auris, you know, from the ear.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And what's so different about this organism compared to other Candida that we already know is that it is multi-drug resistant. And some strains are resistant to all available antifungals. Like we have a number of antifungals in the market. We treat people for fungal infections. This sometimes is resistant to all. And that's why it's very, very important to start doing studies in this area because it is a threat. And the CDC, Center for Disease Control, have labeled it an urgent need. There is an urgent need to address this. So what we did when it first came out, I heard about it and I say, oh, we need to understand this. So I went.
First, could you tell me what it does? So, I mean, we just lived through a pandemic. I'm sure you recall COVID-19. So the symptom profile for that is pretty well known. If I get Candida auris, what do I have to look forward to? Why is this so scary?
It can cause systemic infection, like it can go and affect the kidneys. It also can cross blood-brain barrier and can cause some brain infection. And the mortality rate is quite high, like between more than 30% people who get it, they die. So it is a serious infection. Also, something very interesting about it, it can colonize the skin. Like, in other words, it lives on the skin and then can act as a nidus of infection. It starts to spread the skin. Like in hospitals, for example, you find a lot of Candida auris in certain wards present in the sheets, in the bedding, on the surfaces, because a patient had it on his skin and start to spread it. In fact, in one ward in England, they had to close the whole ward and disinfect it completely to try to get rid of this organism, you know. And one of the things we are doing in our research, apart from trying to develop an antifungal that can inhibit or can treat the systemic infection, we are trying to see, can we find an antifungal can decolonize the skin? In other words, you use it as disinfectant so that it can kill Candida auris. So that's where the complexity of it, both systemic as well as it could be a problem for spreading of disease.
How widespread is it now? How many patients have they found?
In certain areas, it's really was very obvious. In New York, for example, they saw it. In Chicago, they had a lot.
What's a lot? Is it 12? Is it 200?
It's more than like I tell you, like in the US, in the thousands, but not it's not like COVID, okay?
Right.
But it is there. The problem also with this, a lot of the time, Candida auris can be misidentified.
I see.
They don't diagnose it very well. But now we have new technologies that can diagnose it. So sometimes it is there, but we misdiagnose it.
I see. Okay. And then how quickly does it spread? How communicable is it?
It is, as I told you, in hospitals, it spread quite fast. If it is there, it stays about 2 weeks on surfaces, which means, anybody who comes to that area, especially if you are immunocompromised, you can get it. That's why you want new ways to try to basically disinfect it. And we did this study, and we published a couple of studies actually about disinfection, and there are ways now to try to deal with it. And there are a number of small companies trying to develop a disinfectant for this. I published some of them, recently. And actually, today I had another group from New Mexico contacted me. They say, Dr. Ghannoum, we have this disinfectant. We see it kills everything basically, and they did testing in vitro, and in other words, in a test tube, and showed that it can kill Candida auris. And now with what they want my help in is to try to use our animal model, mouse model, to see can we use their compound to basically disinfect the skin. So there is a lot of activity there. Also, our group recently got a National Institute of Health grant to develop an antifungal agent to treat Candida auris in collaboration with a company called Synexis from New Jersey. So we are collaborating together to test this new analog they have. Like they have a number of compounds, and we screened a lot of them, and we found one of them seemed to have the potential of being effective. And that's what the grant we got to do is, can we develop this as a new antifungal to treat Candida auris?
So is this something you're worried about? I mean, it sounds like there's thousands of people. It's fairly communicable. It's in hospitals. It stays for weeks. I mean, is this the kind of mortality rate in excess of 1 out of 3? That sounds fairly serious. So, I mean, I haven't heard anything about it. Is it just because people are exhausted of talking about global pandemics and are just ready to let the waves wash over them, or what?
No, I think it is, as I told you, the CDC said it is an urgent need to deal with it. And so it is very important, and it's recognized. Because, look, it started in Japan, it started to happen in Europe, and now we see it in the US. 2018, we started to see that really it is here. So now that's why there is a great interest by the National Institute of Health to support research to do this. So you worry about it, but I can tell you the good news is we already published a number of papers to show that some drugs under development, they really work against this organism. So I don't think, and some of them can be used in a compassionate base, where if somebody has it and they don't have the usual drugs don't work, they can have access to it. So I'm not too worried from that point of view. I think we are going to have a solution for it, but it's going to take time for having approval of the drugs. There are some clinical trials ongoing now with the different companies to see whether their new investigational antifungal work against these drugs. And we publish, as I said, a number of papers in this area from different companies.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with that. The last thing we need is another major earth-shattering problem to deal with. So I sincerely hope that you guys figure all that out, and I trust that we're in good hands. Where could somebody go to learn a little bit more about BIOHM, your company, your research, your social media presence? Where would you send a person?
I think if they go biohmhealth.com, there is a lot of information there. And now we are starting to do CME, like continuing medical education, to educate people. Also, we are publishing a lot. One of the papers which we are going to submit this week, believe it or not, called Demystifying the Microbiome. So that, because people, even physicians, don't understand what is the microbiome, So we are hoping to help. BIOHM website will be a good source, and we are building it to help people not only see what products we are developing and provide the scientific basis for them. And I tell you, if you look at the literature, we are writing a lot about that. And the other thing which I think will help people, if they go to guttesting.com, there is a way for people to see whether they have imbalance, and gives them an idea that, what, it's good idea now to do a gut testing, because it will give you more personalized information. This guttesting.com, it tells you the potential of the likelihood, basically, of you having an imbalance. So that should be there. And of course, the good news, a lot of papers now are open access. People can, like as you mentioned, like in cancer and the microbiome and other as well, available in the literature. And Google, God bless Google, huh?
Yeah, no kidding at all. Well, that's fascinating stuff. I wish you the best of luck with all of that, and I hope our audience will check those websites out, those resources out, and discover if they've got some kind of gut imbalance, and they could remedy it and improve their lives.
It's my pleasure to really talk to you. It was fun.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Ghannoum, and you have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.